You're listening to Smythe on KABC, where we move beyond the debate and into discourse with people from all walks of life, designed to save society from itself. Join Kay and her guests as they navigate the toughest conversations and prove that the two-party way of thinking is killing America. As Kay always says, no one can control your freedom or free will but you. With that in mind, let's get into it.
And welcome back to the Smythe Show on KABC. Oh,
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
That's
Welcome back to the Smythe Show on KABC. We're on week 4 of 10, and I am emotionally and physically exhausted. I am exhausted at Los Angeles, at California, at this election, at just about everything and everyone. I want to move. I want to write my book and be left alone. I want to turn my students into doctors and help my clients win elections and build their businesses. Who knew that being asked to speak publicly about your expertise would be this freaking exhausting? Danny, next week I've decided that you're going to host and run the show and talk about everything, and I don't want to do anything anymore. Is that okay?
Yeah, right. Nope,
yeah?
Nope, can't do this without you. Nope.
But you do it so well on the LDK Project. For those of you listening today who don't know the LDK Project, I strongly suggest you go and check it out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. But I guess for this week, we should probably just get into it. Gosh, how do I even start? So this week is a pretty special one, I think. Especially, I think for me particularly. This week, I will be interviewing someone who I have wanted to interview for pretty much, not my entire career, because she didn't exist until about halfway through my career thus far. But I don't know, I kind of want to tease it a little bit. I don't want to tell everyone who it is just yet. I want to keep people guessing.
Okay.
So,
well, I mean, you have been talking about her for a while.
I mean, a long time. Like, the whole time we've known each other, for sure.
Yeah.
So, this is actually kind of a crazy story. So, for regular listeners to the show, you'll know that I met Lanny through Instagram. Right, like I slipped in the DMs after seeing him on Magnum PI, and I was like, "Oh, he's a little cutie. I'll hit him up. He's very talented." Yeah. And so, and obviously here we are, like a year later, and got a dog, and talking about moving in together, and all this kind of stuff. It's like I was just suddenly grown up out of nowhere. And so the interview that we're doing today kind of came about in a similar way. I can't even remember where we were. I think we were away, like we were in Utah. And I was actually a little bit drunk, and I just thought, F it, I'm gonna hit this chick up on Instagram. She's got well over 1 million followers. I was like, this is someone who, like, she certainly inspired my career. She's made me think harder about my own politics. She's the only young female millennial commentator who I readily give my time to without any fear of inauthenticity. And I just thought, I'll just hit her up on Instagram and see if I can book her to come on my show. And I mean, she hasn't not shown up yet, so yeah, huge interview today. Can I tease it a little bit more?
Yeah,
a little bit more for the listeners. So I was first introduced to this young millennial through The Daily Show. She was on there for an interview, and I found the host of The Daily Show to be Trevor Noah, for everyone listening, because everyone knows who it is. I found him to be pretty rude, actually, when he interviewed her. I found him to be really condescending. He was really trivial. I felt it was like a very pedantic interview. It was very reminiscent of pretty much every time I've had a conversation with a male baby boomer about my career. That's the kind of condescending tone that I get.
Right.
It's that kind of like you fob someone off, and watching this interview play out. And remember, I'm like introduced to this interview through Trevor Noah's going to interview this very conservative young millennial. So I'm like, oh yeah, maybe he'll like, yell at her about some stuff, and maybe she's like the next Ann Coulter.
Right.
And then I come to find that I'm now a bigger fan of hers and I watch way more of her stuff than I would watch Trevor Noah now, because like he's shown his biases. Right. And like they get along, which is kind of funny. So for everyone listening, like obviously my guest today is Tomi Lahren. Like I think everyone listening is going to know after like that. And this is someone who, like I said, she's really inspired my career. And what I found really unsettling, and actually, yeah, I'm not even going to talk about all the rest of the stuff that I had written down here, Danny, because I actually want to talk to you about this and get your take. So when you Google Tomi Lahren and you look her up on YouTube, she gets destroyed.
Yeah, a lot.
There's not enough content of her speaking out there for her to be destroyed as much as she is. She seems to be this like poster child for like a leftist elite attack.
Yeah.
What is that? As an American, you probably have been more exposed to her through regular television than I have.
I think it has to do with the fact that she's a young female in America that has a very strong voice, right? Just like you. And I think, sorry to say this on the radio, but I don't think men like that. And so they want to challenge it all the time. And so what happens? It actually benefits her because it blows her up, and that's what's happening. She blew up, and people love her. I know women love her, like you. She's very young. She's only, 27 or 28, I think?
Yeah, she's like 10 minutes older than me kind of thing. Yeah.
And look what happened.
I mean, to kind of like contextualize it, and I think this is going to be maybe almost like upsetting from my family back home to a certain extent. Because like I came out to America as a diehard registered liberal Democrat. I was pro Bernie, like not that I can vote, obviously. You can hear my accent, I can't vote. But I was really very much in that line politically. And I think it's because there are no young conservatives who I had anything in common with. I couldn't look at any young conservatives and think, oh, we have things that are similar. So like why, like my young biases, why would I listen?
Right.
I'd like to think that I've at least tried to mitigate a lot of that now. But one of the things that really struck me and has continued to strike me about Tomi Lahren's career is how pro-America she is. And I have this conversation with even my American family, like at least once a week. I think I'm more pro-America than most Americans. Certainly a lot of Americans out here in California.
Yeah.
And when people ask me, like even friends back in the UK, they're like, oh, why America? Why would you live there? It's so awful right now. And I'm like, well, actually, it's really not. I think the people that I surround myself with are wonderful. I'm lucky that I get to be
It's
exposed.
situational for sure.
Yeah. But then there are also like some new things that Tomi Lahren has definitely been at least partial in my inspiration of, such as I'm now pretty pro-gun. The NRA, if you're listening, we're always looking for sponsorship. I'm definitely, like personally, I'm definitely pro-choice, but I will never fault another human being again in my life for being pro-life. If that's what you want to be my guest. I watched a video of her from Final Thoughts the other day, and she went on this tangent about how through COVID, we as Americans, and I say we because, I'm going to become an American eventually. I consider myself already partially a Welsh American. But she really went on this like hard almost rant about how COVID should be what unites Americans. And I felt so inspired by it. I just thought, yeah, absolutely. We're going through, whether or not it's a real pandemic, I don't even care at this point. What we're going through is a huge societal crisis.
Right.
Something like this should bring us together. And I just think it's so interesting that a conservative and an ex-liberal Democrat immigrant agree on that. And my actual American-born liberal followers, I mean, I can't even post that I'm doing this interview yet because I know that people are going to absolutely destroy me for it, just for accepting this interview.
Right.
I'm not going to get like any props for being open-minded and having like the ability to say I love Tomi Lahren's work as much as I love, I don't know, I really like watching Hassan Piker too. I think they're both really clever young millennials that I need to learn from and that most people should learn from and get the opinions of. Ben Shapiro as well. We'll always talk about Ben Shapiro.
I think regardless, once you do put it out there, I think you're going to get a lot of support for it because, again, someone like Tomi who is going against the grain, right? And she's killing it. You know, even though a lot of ideas you might not agree with, or some of them you do, but either way, I think you guys have very similar personalities, and so I think that's why, first of all, this call is going to go really well. So, yeah.
Yeah, if she doesn't call in, I'm going to feel like a right. Well, I can't swear because it's like it's was it national airwaves or whatever. But we'll talk about what the word I am is on on LDK Project, which everyone should tune into as well. Yeah, I guess tune back in and or stay tuned in. Like, feel free to channel hop through the ads. I know I always do, but please come back, because as we continue with this conversation, we will be interviewing Tomi Lahren. We're going to talk about her leaving California. I want to talk about her life now that she's in Nashville, especially since we're desperately trying to get out of this state as well. But we're also going to talk about some of the more kind of, try and touch on some more controversial things. Maybe talk about how women, and particularly millennial women, are treated by older generations, particularly in the media, and how, We'll see. We'll see what happens. I think it's going to be a fun one. I think it's going to be interesting. So stick around. It's the K Smythe Show on KABC, guys. Stick around. Thank you. Welcome back to the K Smythe Show on KABC. Remember to go and check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And joining me and my amazing co-host, Danny Ho, right now is Tomi Lahren. Tomi, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It is such a pleasure to have you here. How are you doing now that you've gotten out of California?
Well, I gotta say, once I left California, I don't know if I will ever turn back, even for vacation. Maybe at some point, but you guys got to get a lot of things figured out before I'm ever going to come back to the West Coast.
Oh, Jesus.
I know. This is exactly what we were just talking about. Danny and I, before we came over to the studio today, and even yesterday on we have another podcast that we do called the LDK Project. I brought up the fact that Gavin Newsom's amazing new policy, which isn't going to work, and I say this as a scientist, that he does, have you heard this? That he doesn't want to sell any new vehicles in California that aren't zero emission by the year 2035. Have you heard about this?
Oh, yes. Even though I'm out of California, I keep up with Governor Greasy Gavin Newsom on a daily basis. And I tweeted it out. Of course, it kind of got buried in everything that happened yesterday. But, like I like to tell folks, once you give someone like that, especially someone like Governor Newsom, once you start giving them so much power and so much control, don't be surprised when they continue to take more and more and more, and you are well on your way to the yellow brick road to communism. And I know people think that's dramatic, but take a look at the state right now. It is not hyperbolic or dramatic to say that you guys are headed in a horrible direction of even more infringements and tyranny, and every day it gets worse.
I couldn't agree more. It was back in December, I went on Dr. Drew's show, of all people, and, I don't know if this is, supposed to be kept a secret, but, as far as I was aware, I was actually asked on the show because he couldn't say that California and the way that we're, say, handling the homeless population here, I mean, it's a genocide, what's going on here. This place is... And I come from a very socialist state, remember. I left a very socialist state only to come to what I was hoping would be an actual beautiful American free state, only to find that it's even worse than where I came from. So you've just moved to Nashville. What would you say? Because Danny and Danny is the cousin of my partner, Lenny Chun. We are currently on the market and looking for our next place that we need to move. We're going to Ben Shapiro and Tomi Lahren out of California. And you're in Nashville, right? How is Nashville compared to California? What should us young millennials know prior to moving to Nashville?
Nashville is a beautiful city. I got to tell you, it doesn't get much better than here. And of course, California, by the way, is beautiful. And so for those that do want to flee, I don't blame you. But I would encourage some conservatives to stay in California and fight for it. I tried to fight the good fight, but for those that are still willing to fight the good fight, I hope they do. But the thing about Nashville is this is a red state of Tennessee, but I live in a blue city in a blue county of Nashville. We got a lot of liberals here. We got a lot of Californians fleeing to Nashville and bringing their politics right along with them. So if anybody's been following me recently, you know that I might have left California, but I know all the California tricks. And here in Nashville, we've got a Democratic mayor who is modeling a lot of the things that I saw in California and bringing them right here to Nashville. And I think residents are finally starting to wake up and see that pattern, and they're starting to wake up and understand that you are California and you're Tennessee, and you got to be careful. But I do think that Tennessee, and I do think that the South as a whole will fight back. I don't think that they're going to let it go the way of California. And as long as I live here, I'm going to be sure that at least people are aware of what they're doing and what they're voting for.
So that is inspiring. And this is why, okay, so I got to just point this out, because I don't think I even went into enough detail in this in the introduction. So I came out to the United States just over 5 years ago. I was a registered liberal Democrat. I thought I was moving to, like I said, this beautiful liberal state, but with, kind of practical conservative policies. I knew I couldn't make the money in the UK doing what I do, which is, be a social scientist. I fix problems professionally, and I tell other people how to fix theirs. And, get people through their doctorates and whatnot. And so there was no real market for that. So I moved out to California, saved up my entire life, really sacrificed pretty much my adolescence, because I knew I had to do the work to be able to move out here as a legal immigrant and do things the right way. I managed to do that. I've gotten 2 renewals now, or 1 renewal under the Trump administration, which, by the way, it took me 6 months to get my visa under Obama. It took me overnight to get renewed under Trump. Just going to throw that out there. So when people throw out, Trump's like anti-immigration. No, he's anti-illegal immigration. As a legal immigrant, I have done very well under the Trump administration, I must say. But one of the things that really started to change my mind and evolve my views on America after moving out here was you and your work. You are the only young female political commentator that I personally feel like I have anything... even a lot of our policies I think are very different, but I think the way that you represent yourself and the fact that you don't speak in hyperbole, you actually tell the truth, and you are telling the truth about California. It's a communist, it's a failed state, and I actually go to the extreme of thinking that if I were to map it out, I can see the actions of Gavin Newsom, of the Democratic Party, actually contributing towards turning California into a prison camp. It's literally just going to be a state open-air mental health facility prison camp. And so seeing you then move to Nashville, that was a huge warning sign for me. That was like, oh goodness, this is going to... if the smartest people in the room are moving out of California and taking their businesses with them, this needs to be something that we need to consider. So now that you're in Nashville, you're living in a blue area, how do you navigate being around more liberal people? Because one of the things that we're still dealing with here in Los Angeles is being certainly more conservative. Obviously, this conservative talk radio show, but, we're still pretty common sense policy driven. How do you handle dealing with people from different political spectrums in your day-to-day life? Because that's something that we have no idea how to do. We're just hemorrhaging friends at this point.
Yeah, that was the thing living in California, is I always had to watch my back. I really couldn't go anywhere without having to watch my back, and it was very vocal because it is very much that mob mentality in California. And the reason that it is, and I believe that it is because the liberals in California believe that they have a monopoly on the state, they have a monopoly on ideas, and they do not tolerate anyone who doesn't subscribe to their worldview. And they also believe, because they are so indulgent, that they believe that everyone around them is also a liberal. Now, I get it. California is a blue state, a lot of liberals there, but there are a lot of conservatives. But these liberals, they don't even take a second to think that maybe the person that they're talking to, maybe the person they're lecturing, maybe the person that they are virtue signaling to might be a conservative. Because quite frankly, they don't care. They think that if you are a conservative, you are the Antichrist, and it is their moral obligation to attack you, to berate you, or to do whatever they can to make you feel like you're lower than low. And they believe that they have the right to do it. Now, the difference when you move to the South is this. Yes, Nashville is liberal. There are a lot of liberals here. However, you are still in Tennessee. So even the liberals that are kind of the aggressive liberals here, they don't feel so comfortable being an aggressive liberal to someone like me, because they well know that there might be the majority of people in the restaurant, the bar, the grocery store, wherever, that might be conservative, and they're not going to take that chance. So at the end of the day, liberals can only exist in mobs. They cannot exist on their own. And they don't want to take the chance of being around conservatives that are going to shut them down. And that is the difference. Even when you move to a blue city in a red state, you're still going to be much better off.
That is, honestly, I feel like if I didn't have another, like, what is it, like another, like 30 minutes on this show, I feel like we could just draw a line under everything there, and I'd be like, right, come on, Danny, we're going to Nashville right now. Let's go. I have no reason to stay here at this point. Like, literally no reason at all. And I think what you touched upon there was really interesting, that notion of, like, automatic groupthink that is really, I think, exemplified best in the liberal millennial generation. Obviously, it's there within, like, baby boomers, but the way that they kind of communicate that with us, it's like, oh, it's okay, you've got feelings, which, you know, I don't even entertain in my day-to-day life anymore. Like, I just can't. I'd end up, like, flipping a table or something. But yeah, the groupthink associated with California, and actually, I got to disagree with you. I think California is actually a really purple state. I don't know if that's because I spend a lot of time out in the desert. Maybe it's because of my work. I'm exposed to a lot of, I guess, more Republican, like centrist, right-leaning individuals. Like, I think that liberal California is actually shrinking, and I would say it's shrinking as a result of things like the homeless crisis here. I don't know if you wanted to talk about anything to do with that. At this point, I mean, I could talk about the homeless crisis all day, but I could also never talk about it again at this point. I feel like it's kind of
No, I mean,
out.
living in California, obviously it's a crisis, and the leadership in California is doing nothing to address it. And when you look at the number of projects that we voted in a measure to fund housing for the homeless, Prop HHH, and if you look at the number of actual compounds that have been built or facilities that have been built for the homeless, you'll find that it is incredibly few. In fact, 2/3 of the projects haven't even been started. And then these units themselves are costing $500,000 plus. They're costing more to build these complexes for the homeless than a lot of times it does for just a private company to build whatever business they're building. So you got to ask, and this is the question that I ask the Californians, is you have to look at where the money is going. You have to look at your leaders. You have to look at who and what construction companies are getting these contracts, and you have to trace it back to these politicians. Is someone getting a kickback? Is that why it's costing so much to solve the problem? And do they really want to solve the problem, or will solving the problem mean that they don't get any more money? That's questions and critical thinking that people need to talk about, but no one wants to, because it just seems like people accept the fact that there is a homeless crisis. It doesn't need to be that way.
I could not agree more. And when we come back after this next break, I want to dig into this more with you, because I am at the point now where I have a lot of people in my life. You know, I've done a lot of work in the cannabis industry. I'm surrounded by a lot of liberal people who think that I'm, you know, exactly like you said, they think that I'm like them. To an extreme. So when we come back, I want to talk about how you navigate those kinds of relationships in your day-to-day life, and how you get past the fact that most liberals don't want to hear about the science. So when we come back, my amazing guest, Tomi Lahren, and my amazing co-host, Danny Ho. Thank you so much. We'll be right back with you. Should we just carry on?
Perfect, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Can we just keep it rolling?
Just keep it rolling. We're
Wicked.
rolling.
Okay. And we're back here at the Smythe Show on KABC. It's a gorgeous Friday night here in the hellhole that is Southern California. I am joined by Danny Ho, my co-host, and Tomi Lahren is on the line. So, Tomi, when we were in the last segment, you kind of noted a couple of really interesting things. You talked about groupthink here in California and how most liberals don't want to do the work to track the money down. They don't want to look under the hood of the people they choose to vote for. And that's one of my biggest concerns about this upcoming election. I mean, like, I have a lot of concerns about this upcoming election anyway, and I can't even vote. But, you know, Tomi, the purpose of this show is really, and, like, I think for the most part, I'm, like, pretty socially liberal, to be honest with you. Like, there are certain things, like, I don't think the way we're handling the homeless crisis is fair. I don't think my tax dollars should go towards it, certainly at this point. But, you know, I've got a family back in the UK. I've got a family here. Now, my family here know not to judge me because Lanny will kill them. But, you know, I've got a lot of family back in the UK, and they're still, because as a result of Brexit, and remember, I'm pretty anti-Brexit, like very anti-Brexit, but pro-Trump somehow. How do you navigate having such a prolific career, being as intellectual as you are, being outspoken? how do you navigate relationships, say, from your past with your family, from people from different political spectrums? Do you just not talk about politics? Or have you kind of come up with a means of navigating, what is like literally the most inspiring career that I've come across in my work when I was a young journalist? How do you navigate those relationships, or do you? And what advice do you have for us who are trying to?
I come from a conservative family, so I've never had issues within the family. I mean, I come from a conservative state, South Dakota, that, God willing, will always be a conservative state. So I, growing up, didn't have a ton of diversity of thought around me, although, of course, we did have Democrats. I still went to public school, and we do have Indian reservations that surround the state and within the state, which are very liberal and very Democratic. However, for me, really, with this career, it's more of navigating relationships even with other conservatives, because what I do is controversial. What I say is controversial. Now, I would say controversial in that the left considers anything that they don't agree with to be controversial. 100%, the truth is in your hate speech. So if you disagree with them, you are controversial. But if you are a liberal and you say the things that I say in the manner that I say them, then you are passionate, then you are inspiring, then you are a feminist. So again, there's a lot of double standards we can go into. But for me, navigating personal relationships, I have friends that are liberal, and I have no issue that they're liberal and I'm conservative, and vice versa, because we have a respect for one another. I don't look at them as liberals and think that they are the Antichrist. I might not agree with them. They might frustrate me sometimes, but I don't look at them as less than, and they don't look at me as less than. They know the kind of woman I am. They know the kind of person I am, and though we might disagree, they know where my heart is. And I would hope that for this country, that we can agree to disagree, that we can still have love and respect for people who disagree with us. And it doesn't have to be this mob mentality. There can be this place, there used to be in this country, where we can just have conversations and dialogue, or we cannot talk about politics at all. That is still a thing. We've forgotten it in 2020. Right. I hope we can get it back.
That's borderline poetic. We should get you on the LDK project, so we don't have to worry about ad breaks and stuff there. And we should just talk about all of the other things outside of politics that we agree on, that we don't agree on, that we're interested in. Like, I'm a 90s kid, and we used to judge people by whether their parents would let us, like, smoke pot and drink in their basements and attics or not. Like, that was it. That was the extent of how much we judged people. And, it kind of devastates me that, like, I mean, I've got close friends. I've got even, like, professional colleagues and people who are supposed to be, quote, supporting my career, who don't want to work with me because they're like, oh, you're doing a KABC show? Like, oh, so you're conservative now? And I'm like, I'm not conservative now. I'm a common sense policy person because I'm a social scientist. And when I look at what the Democratic Party are doing, all I see is hypocrisy. Do I agree with everything the Republicans are doing? No. But at least they don't lie about it. And that's where the kind of disconnect is for me. Like, I don't want to live somewhere where I can't trust my I mean, like, when can you ever trust politicians? But, like, I know for a fact that here, was it one point, like, my favorite example is the 1.6 billion or 1.3 billion that was given to tackle the homeless crisis here, and 40% went on soft costs. The other 60% can barely be accounted for. But when, like, as you've kind of grown up, now I know that you went to university in Las Vegas. So as you've moved around the country, do you find that people are really diverse by, like, a state level? Because that's something that I've noticed. Like, every state I go to has its own identity. Almost like when I go to Europe, every country has its own identity. And I'm almost at this point for more of, like, a state-led government. Do you think something like that would be more appropriate for the United States? Or do you think, like, having this kind of macro, federal, I don't even know what you would call it now, Gorgon?
I think I'm a big advocate for states' rights, always have been. I think that the best way to govern is at the local level. However, in the summer and fall of 2020, because some of these liberal states and cities have gone so far off the rails, President Trump, who I know for a fact believes in states' rights and believes in small government, has had to step in because these cities are being allowed to burn to the ground. Look at Portland. Look at Seattle. Look at cities across this country. Look at right now Louisville, Kentucky. I mean, the fact that our president has to send in the National Guard and federal agents have to be deployed because these liberal mayors and governors and leaders cannot manage the law and order within their own cities and states is despicable. But the fact of the matter is, President Trump has a duty to protect the American people. You would hope that those leaders would feel that same sense of responsibility for their communities, but they don't. But to go back to your question about, do I think states are they certainly do. And I would actually, because I've lived so many places at this point, mostly on the west and in the middle of this country, I'll tell you, one of the reasons I got into doing what I'm doing is because I come from the middle of this country. I come from middle America, both in income and geography. And we are the forgotten Americans. We are the people that work hard, don't ask for anything from anybody, just want to put our heads down, have as little government interference as possible, and live our lives and be decent humans. And those are the kind of Americans that came out to elect Trump in 2016, and they're the same Americans that are going to come out in 2020. People that aren't the loudest ones, they aren't the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, but they're the backbone of this country. And they're going to come out and they're going to vote. And you're going to see it in the South, you're going to see it in Middle America, and I think you're going to see it in places like California, that even though it's going to be a blue state, we know it, and by the way, voter fraud has a lot to do with that, but you are going to see those conservatives that I believe are going to be pushed to the brink, and they will step up because that's what Americans do.
Okay, so I just want to touch on one of the points you made. So you got into your career. So I know how I got into my career. I was told by my parents, pick one skill, be excellent at it, practice it, you can do it anywhere. My mum wanted me to be a hairdresser. My dad, I don't think he really cared. I think he probably wanted me to be a musician, really. But I went down the route of being a writer and nonfiction. And then that kind of, you're kind of limited, really. It's like if you want to make money in this line of work, you either have to get into ghostwriting or you have to get outspoken. And I was lucky enough to get into it at a really young age, work my way up. I was, like I said, super liberal. I was, I can't say the word that I want to use because it's like national airwaves or federal airwaves or whatever. But again, LDK project, the word I'm using. I was one of those liberals. And then I move out to America thinking okay, well, now I don't have to, worry about my taxes going towards people who can't be bothered to work. Now I don't have to worry about most of my money going away. I can actually save it and invest in my family and the people I love because I'm very almost tribal in that way. And, the kind of older I got, the more I realized, the more controversial I was, the more success that I gained. I know for a fact that was a huge contributing factor in both of my expert visas in moving out here. But the more I go on with this career and the more I actually include the science and the data, because I don't even know that I mentioned this on this show, but I spend all day, every day turning people into doctors. That's my day job as an academic consultant. And so I'm exposed to all of this data. And when I look at the data, yeah, it turns out I'm a lot more right-wing than I was 5 years ago when I first moved out here. Living in America amongst liberal Americans has turned me more conservative. And I'm more than happy to come on the radio and talk about that. I'm still for gay rights. I'm still for, a women's right to choose. I'm still for all of that stuff. But I'm also for all of the rights to think, feel, and say if you're not for that stuff. As long as you don't go out and literally burn down someone's home or destroy someone's business or physically attack someone, be my guest, think, feel, say whatever you want without judgment. And that's where I guess the inspiration for this show came from. How is it that I as a liberal can come out here, become conservative, but still to most people come across as liberal, but beyond my job is it's this weird mishmash. And that's something that I was inspired by as a result of your career. And we do have to go into an ad break. I'm so sorry about this little filibuster of mine, but when we come back from this next ad break, I want to talk about what inspired you to get into this line of work, which wasn't something I thought we'd talk about today, but since you inspired me to get into this line of work, we better had. And then, yeah, Danny, if you want to kind of touch upon anything, because I know we watch your show, we watch your stuff on YouTube, we follow you. Yeah, it would be great to learn more about what made Tomi Lahren become Tomi Lahren. So it's great. We'll be right back after these ads.
Cool. Perfect. He did 11, so you can probably do 13 here or whatever, 12.
Oh, perfect. That's even better.
Okay. And so this will be the last segment.
Excellent.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And thank you. And welcome back to the K Smythe Show. We're in our final segment this evening with my absolute career dream come true. I cannot believe I'm getting to do this on my first talk radio show. My interview tonight with Tomi Lahren has been inspiring. It's everything that I hoped and more. But before the break, we were talking about, okay, so I got into this line of work not necessarily as a result of your career, but I was inspired to stick at it as a result of your career. And honestly, the way that you're like treated online, I get physically furious about it, and I have to go and smoke a lot of weed after I read a lot of the stuff that's written about you because I disagree with it so vehemently. What is it that keeps you going? What is it that inspired you to get into this line of work? Tell me everything. What makes you tick? What gets you going?
For me, the reason that I've been able to be in this career for as long as I have, and granted I'm 28 years old, but I've been doing this since I was 21. And the reason that I'm still around, the reason I wasn't just a flash in the pan is because I am authentically me, and I will say what I feel, regardless of who likes it, who dislikes it, what money it makes me, what money it loses me, who it pisses off, and who it overjoys. I say it, and people know that about me. They know that they're going to get me, and they know that I'm going to tell it like it is, and that I'm going to be honest and true to myself. I stopped worrying about losing fans and followers a long time ago. I am far more concerned with losing myself trying to make a buck. And I'll give you an example. If you followed my career, you know that I was fired from The Blaze because I went on The View and I expressed that I'm pro-choice. I believe in limited government. I believe that's the most conservative thing you can be, is someone who believes that the government doesn't have a place in most things. And I lost my job for that. And it was a really difficult time, but I wouldn't change it. I would never take it back. I will never apologize for it. It made a lot of conservatives angry, and I understand that. But I got to say what I got to say, and I got to be true to me. And I can't be worried about losing fans and followers or upsetting my base or whatever it is. I can't be worried about that because that's the moment that I lose the magic of Tomi. Another thing I did, I guess it was probably about a month and a half ago, is I went on Instagram Live and I did a PSA for men. Really nothing political at all. Just talking about men, just talking about dating. A lot of conservative men didn't like it. They thought that because I was being critical of men, that somehow made me like a liberal feminist. Am I going to apologize because some conservative men got upset with me? Absolutely not. I'm going to say what I need to say. And I'm going to do that no matter what it is. Right now, in the midst of everything going on in this country, I'm an adamant supporter of law enforcement. I love law enforcement to my very core. And for me, when I look at what they do each and every day in this country, it is my duty to be a voice for them because I know that they can't be a voice for themselves. It's my duty to be a voice for their wives, their husbands, their children, their moms, their dads that worry every single day if those officers are going to come home at night, especially with what's going on in our streets right now. So for me, especially this summer, that's what keeps me going. That's what inspires me. And it's really the backbone people of this country who feel like they don't have a voice. If I can even just be some small part of their voice, that's an honor to me. And I'll take all the backlash all day long. Like I said, just another day in paradise doesn't bother me whatsoever.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's
amazing. I really couldn't agree more. I think that's inspiring. I mean, and I remember, your commentary on The View, especially for me as like a European, where it's like, we're not allowed to involve a lot of, I have my faith. It's not something that I talk about too publicly, but I definitely have it. Like, I was actually hoping we talk about it today, but we've run out of time almost. But, when it comes to government being involved in decisions, like in any kind of day-to-day life, like unless you're providing or solving a problem, like you don't need to be involved, you don't need to regulate, can you please just like back off? And I couldn't agree more. I'm personally pro-choice, but I would never disrespect or be horrible to, I have a lot of friends, close friends who are pro-life, and we discuss it, and it's an agree to disagree situation. And I honestly do think that when it comes to the millennial generation, we get attacked, and I know that you get called out online for this a lot, and again, like I said, it drives me round the bend. Oh God, I wish I could swear. It bothers me that when you evolve your mindset, and when you evolve your approach to a particular situation, you get called out for it, for maybe, like, I don't even know, like, just people online need to be trolls, they need to jump on something, they need to find something to latch onto, to dislike. And, you know, again, for me as a European immigrant in this country, I think it's just so surprising that I actually find that really inspiring. I think that we as young people, it is our responsibility to be, you know, obviously steadfast in who we are and learn about who we are and grow and evolve, but also, yeah, like have that open mindset to say, like, you know, this is how I used to feel, this is how I think now. I went through this difficult time, this is what I learned from it. And I mean, I'm all for you. I think American, honestly, like I watched your final thoughts when you talked about how America responds to COVID is going to really define this country and how this is what should bring us all together. And it actually broke my heart to realize that, you know, I watched it a little while after it came out, and that just hasn't happened. We can't trust our generation to come together, to look past each other's, like, minimal kind of leanings when it comes to politics and actually solve real human problems. And so that's something that I think you don't get enough credit for, just personally. And I think that it's something that the millennial generation should, I think, have more responsibility in, since we're going to be the next generation of leaders. Speaking of which, would you ever get into politics more seriously, or do you think you're always going to be on the commentator side?
You know, people ask me that often, and I'm 28 years old, so there's a lot of time left. If anything I would run for would be the mayor of Nashville, because I really don't like what he's doing to our beautiful city. But that's a long way off. Quite frankly, I love what I do. I know that politicians go through a lot, and I know that they, you know, the way that their life is. I would prefer to stay on this side. I like to have fun. I like to be just a regular person as much as I possibly can. Mm-hmm. So that's not really something that I would be eager to get into. But kind of like Donald Trump said, you know, several years back, if my country needs me, and if I can inspire some folks, or I can make a real positive change at that level, then it's never something I'd rule out.
Well, you would have my vote if I was legally allowed to vote. And maybe I will be. Maybe Lanny will have married me by that point when you do decide to run. So you'll definitely have my vote. If we move to Nashville, I mean, I'm expecting to move there this weekend now, Danny, just FYI. That's the new deal now.
All right.
Okay.
Let's get it done.
Yeah. We're not going to do Utah anymore. Maybe we'll have the second home in Utah. Yeah.
Maybe.
We had a lovely time in Utah a couple of weeks ago. It was truly wonderful. So I guess, like, as we're coming to the tail end of the show here, I mean, you know, if you've got anything that you kind of want to plug or talk about, anything that we should be keeping an eye out for in your kind of near career future, I would love to use the time for that. But otherwise, I also want to kind of know, just lastly, what do you think's really going to happen this election? I mean, socially, like, you know, I'm a macro social scientist. I mean, are the aliens going to have to invade to keep us together? Plug your show and tell us how the world's going to end, Tommy.
Sure. Well, I'll kind of do one and kill two birds with one stone in that answer. I'm at Fox Nation right now. Fox News is a digital streaming platform. That's where my final thoughts are each and every single day. And for those of you who follow me on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, you know that I've always got something to say. And I'm pretty good at triggering the left with the truth, so it's not very hard. But, you know, this election, I'm very confident that Donald Trump is going to win. I believe that the silent majority in this country is going to come out in force, because they're looking at what's happening. They're looking at the Democrats that are keeping businesses closed. They're looking at Democrats who are encouraging, if not just sitting back and watching cities being burned in some perverted form of what they deem justice. And I think you're going to see a lot of average Americans who maybe were never even political in their life say, if this is what the Democrats are offering, I don't want a part of it. And they might not like Donald Trump, but they're looking at the other side. They're looking at the candidate who can't even get out a coherent sentence. Mm-hmm. And they're thinking, nah, not going to happen. But I do think that my biggest fear, and I've been talking about this for a long time, and for some people it's not the sexy thing to talk about, but voter fraud and mail-in voting. I've been talking about this since before COVID, since before the Democrats and the left has been able to use mail-in voting and weaponize it with coronavirus. I've been talking about this because I've seen it in California. This is something Americans need to pay attention for. Do not let your friends vote by mail. do not vote by mail. The second that you lose physical custody of your ballot, you are putting it in the hands of God knows who, and you don't want to do that. So that is what my eye is on. I'm very worried that Donald Trump could win this election, and all of a sudden they could find hundreds of thousands of mail-in votes that they just happen to slip in there. And I think then that's when you're going to see total mayhem, because I don't think that the Republicans are going to deal with it and put up with it. But the other side, I think they're going to burn this country down, quite honestly. I think that what we're seeing right now is just a precursor to it. I think when Donald Trump wins, and I'm very confident he will, I think that there are going to be people in this country who feel entitled and feel like it really is their duty to destroy everything. And I think that that's when you're going to see a real battle in this country, because you're going to see people that are fed up, that are tired of putting up with this from the left. They're tired of every time the left gets angry about something, their natural reaction is to burn and loot a city. And you're going to see Americans who have been quiet for a long time, I think, stand up and say, we're not doing this anymore. And I worry about our country, but I do think we're headed in that direction.
Tomi, thank you so much for coming on the show today. And I hate to end this Friday night. Well, it's a Friday night when the show goes out, so I hope everyone in California, across Southern California, and all of our listeners, I mean, even if you're watching this on a Wednesday afternoon at home, please go and have a drink, because, or a joint, or, you know, like something that, you know, helps take the edge off. Because as a scientist who can't vote, with absolutely no kind of reason to go in either direction politically or choose a side, I have to say I completely agree with you. I think that everything that you just described is I would put my money on that happening. But then again, I also put my money on Trump. Well, no, actually, yeah, I put my money on Trump winning the first time around, and no one listened to me then. Tomi, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I would love to have you on any of our other podcasts, anything you want to get involved in, anytime in the future. You are fantastic. I applaud you for always being your authentic self and standing up and not apologizing for that, but also being able to get along with people in your social circle who maybe aren't as, you know, conservative, or maybe who don't even want to get involved in politics. Like, that's the kind of representation that I think the millennial generation needs. And I mean, goodness, wouldn't it be great if the internet disappeared, we could catch you on television, and everyone could stop screaming in that nightmare echo chamber. So thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was, dream come true.
It was amazing. Thank you so much.
Keep holding it down in California. Someone's got to fight for it.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys fighting the good fight.
Oh, thank you so much. And for everyone listening at home, you can catch up with our interviews with everything on ksmythe.com. That's KAYSMYTHE. And you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And our Instagram handle for this is just ksmythe. And you should also go and check out our other show, the LDK Project. That's Lima Delta Kilo Project for our troops. You should definitely go listen if you're at 29 Palms. There's a huge shout out for you in episode 3. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for listening. This has been the best Friday night. And good night, everyone. I'll see you next week. Okay, we good?
Perfect.
Dope.